Do you know that curry is one of the greatest health foods that you can eat? And what we're doing today is we're cooking the chicken on the bone because we've got quite a lot of tomatoes in this curry. And the acidity in the tomatoes dissolves some of the calcium out of the chicken bones. Now, most people would rush into the supermarket and buy a packet of drums and thighs. But it is far more economical and it's far nicer to buy a lovely fresh chicken and to portion it yourself. All you do is you cut through the skin on the leg and you bend the leg backwards so that you can see where the joint is, and you cut through the joint. The other thing that you must always remove when you're doing a chicken is the spleen gland, because sometimes the fat in that spleen gland is a bit old. You can clearly see that gland sitting there. The chicken is now lying on its breast. It's easier to cut the wings off. And just there we are. I'm also going to use this lovely piece of the backbone because that has, you know, they always say the sweetest meat is next to the bone, and that's absolutely true. So you cut through the sides and you break the back. It'll automatically just break in the right spot. Then the breast. I'd like to keep the breast on the bone because it cooks far nicer like that. But first of all, I just need to cut out this bit of backbone here. So just use a decent sharp knife and cut off that bit of backbone. Now we're going to cut the breasts but leave the bone on. Now the easier route to do this is to use a really big, strong, sturdy cook's knife and to use the smooth side of the meat mallet. Now the spice mix that we're using to coat the chicken in is some curry powder. We've used some of our garlic pepper and we've used some of our chicken stock powder. This goes in there and you simply use a nice big plastic bag. You can even use a shopping bag and just throw everything in there. Once it's in, hold the top of the bag and the air in the bag helps to tumble this lot. Now I'm going to show you how to brown that chicken, but also just on how to prepare tomatoes. To take the skin off, just cut across on the bottom side of the tomato and then cut out the little eye or the stem part. Pour boiling water over these. Now you just leave them to sit. Now let's just quickly brown this chicken. Now to brown this chicken, I'm using my favorite pot, this lovely Le Creuset casserole. And I've also cut a greaseproof blanket, which I'm going to show you just now how to use. Put the pot on the stove and let it get warm. Only when it is warm enough do you add the oil to the pot. Don't heat the oil too far in advance. And now you place your chicken portions skin side down. I've browned the chicken and I've turned it, and you can see what nice browning we're getting here. The only most important watch point I would suggest here is be careful not to have the heat excessively high, because you don't want to burn the curry, you just want to develop the flavor. And what I forgot to say earlier on is that together with the curry powder and the stock and the garlic pepper, we've also added a little bit of flour. And that bit of flour will also help to thicken the sauce later on. The other thing that is really important to remember about onions is that it is so much better to season your onions before you brown them. You get far more browning and they go soft quicker. And I always just, as a matter of course, now put some green onion seasoning whenever I'm doing onions. So the onions are nicely seasoned and they've just been chopped reasonably finely. Now the second lot of chicken is ready to come out. It's been browned nicely. Right. Now in that same pan, you put the onion, and the browning left from the chicken will obviously help the onion an enormous amount. And now you cover those onions with this greaseproof paper blanket. Just squash the paper down onto the onions. Cover the pot with a lid and turn the heat right down. And we leave those onions to simmer very slowly. While the onions are simmering, we'll quickly do the tomato. Now, the tomatoes have been sitting in the boiling water, and just put a fork into the stem end, and look how easy, eh? Chop those tomatoes. Flat side down. Here we've got the tomatoes. They've got the tomato pesto in, and we're going to put a little bit of sugar over them. And tomatoes can also happily do with a bit of green onion seasoning. And the onions should be nice and smeared by now. You see how the paper traps the steam, and that helps to soften the onions. That softens the onions beautifully. We add a lot of garlic. I think it's about 12 cloves of garlic. This is just half a little chili. And tomatoes go in, come sweetheart. And just to give it a little bit of liquid, put half a cup, little bit of water in there. When you position the chicken, remember the legs, the thighs, are going to be the ones who are going to take the longest to cook. So make sure you put them down and put the skin side up. Now you can either cook this on top of the stove, or alternatively you can cook it in the stove, in the oven, like a casserole, which is perhaps a little easy. And just to carry on with that same gentle, kind treatment we've done up to now, cook the chicken at 160 degrees for an hour and a quarter. Here's our chicken. It's now been in the oven for an hour and a quarter. It's nicely cooked. Now we can add the real curry sauce, because you don't want to cook a sauce for too long. This is our coat and cook tikka curry sauce. This is adding the gourmet touch. And we just stir this around. We'll just heat this through. It's not really necessary to cook it a lot. And as a final little touch, add a nice generous handful of fresh coriander. And this pot is good enough to take to the table. So you put it on the table and you serve it with rice and some lovely sambals, and Mother is the best cook.